open that day, guaranteed. There's nothing worse than trying to find the right gift for somebody that already has everything. Whether that special present is for a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan or an Alabama Crimson Tide backer, maybe Gramps is a lifelong Dallas Cowboys supporter, or your brother-in-law is in LSU Tiger territory. Know a member of the Baylor Alumni Association? Is there a better Father's Day gift for someone who's a Kansas City Chiefs fan? Send them the coolest present they'll open that day, guaranteed. Now, if your favorite pro team is the Buffalo Bills or those Minnesota Vikings, well, we're sorry about that. Also, if you're a New Mexico State Aggie or a Tulane Green Wave alum, not much they can do. After all, the name isn't nice effort, you had a pretty good season footballs.com. The name is championshipfootballs.com. The coolest present they'll open that day, guaranteed.
Your client's going away for 10 years. Unless we swap first-round picks.
Fantasy football draft season is upon us. It's time for you to put the PP back in the PPR league with the sponsors of today's show, Manscaped. The leaders in below-the-waist grooming just launched the new Performance Package 4.0. Don't neglect your balls like the Packers front office has been neglecting Aaron Rodgers. Join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get ready for kickoff by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. This will help you tame that Troy Polamalu in your pants. And good news for our international listeners. Their life-changing products are now available in Canada, the UK, across Europe, Australia, South Africa, and Singapore. All with the 20% off and free international shipping when you use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY today. One of the best sponsors of the show is named SimBull. That's SIMBULL. SimBull, where Wall Street meets sports gambling in this innovative app. The SimBull brings the fun of being able to play for the long term by purchasing, selling, and trading stocks of your teams. When your teams win, you win a payout. Well, when they lose, you don't lose money. The value of your team's share is all that matters, and it's easy to use. Just download the SimBull app on your Play Store and use the promo code MDSFantasy for a $10 deposit of at least $10 or more. Join the fun of investing in your team for the long haul, where the sportsbook edge is put back into your hands as the player. For the latest and most fun in sports gambling, download SimBull and again, use the promo code MDSFantasy for your $10 deposit bonus today. Do you have trouble waking up in the morning? Well, not anymore, because Invader Coffee is here to make you look forward to that morning sunshine. Rated one of the best, smoothest tasting coffees on the market today. Originating out of Texas, this rare coffee product is able to reach new heights in quality from its air roasting process, creating coffee beans with the most robust and smooth flavor you will ever find. So make your mornings more enjoyable by going to invadercoffee.com and use the promo code BELLYUP for 15% off your next purchase. Again, that is promo code BELLYUP for 15% off of your Invader Coffee purchase today at invadercoffee.com. Hey there, sports fans. This is Dan Mater, the host of the MD's Fantasy Football Show, and I am so happy and proud to announce our availability on the Unhinged Radio Network. All you gotta do is go to unhingedsn.airtime.pro to catch us on Sundays at 12 to 1 p.m. or Monday, Thursday, and Fridays from 6 to 7:30 p.m. or on Tuesdays at 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern. That's right, we are available 5 days a week on the Radio Unhinged Network, now powered by Belly Up Sports, giving you the best fantasy football information you could possibly get out there to give yourselves, the MD Nation, the edge in your fantasy football leagues to become champions today. So check out Unhinged Radio and listen to sports talk in a whole new way today.
This is the MD's Fantasy Football Show with Dan Mater, giving you the X's and O's of all things fantasy.
Welcome back, MD Nation, to the show. You are tuning back into the MD's Fantasy Football Show here on the East Coast at 11 a.m. on Friday. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mater, and I went back across the pond for the second week in a row to get us another guest, and now we have Mr. Richard King, or Rich King as he prefers, of King Fantasy Sports. Check out kingfantasysports.com. You can always follow him on Twitter at kingfantasy_sports. I highly recommend you guys check this guy out. He's one of the best in the industry. Rich, thank you so much for coming on to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. It's Friday, so nearly end of the week. Means that we've got Sunday to look forward to, which is good. So got a weekend with the kids first, and then be right back into it.
That is all to say. You got a nice weekend lined up. I just got more shows to do apparently here. What we got going on today, of course, we got the Thursday night recap. We're going to talk about the late window of Sunday games, the Sunday night game, the Monday night game. And to kick off the show, we'll talk about the injury updates from yesterday's show, which you can always go back and check out on your favorite pod streaming app. We're available to you on iHeart, Google Play, Stitcher, Spreaker, wherever. Of course, you can always check us out on social media where we're streaming live now at Belly Up MDFF Show and on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to the MD's Fantasy Football Show when you get the chance. Rich, I guess we can't bury the lead here, right? Christian McCaffrey, the hamstring, we just have to kick off with that, even though we'll talk about the Thursday night recap in a little bit. They called it a strain, so that leads me to believe it's not a full pull, but probably will still miss at least a week or two. In my mind, I would imagine, and barring something catastrophe happening, Juba Hubbard's got to be the number one pickup heading into next week. Yeah,
100%. With a hamstring injury as well, the thing I'm worried about is even when he returns, we're not going to see the same workload for him. So I think Juba Hubbard will definitely be the number one pickup for everyone. So if you haven't blown all of your fab already on Elijah Mitchell,
right,
then time to use the rest of it on Juba Hubbard.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and this is why if you can help it, you don't want to use 100% of your fab on any one particular player unless it's just, a gold mine and you're in the playoff stretch. My advice was to give about 30 to 40%. That was probably a little bit too low because at that time when we did that show, it was just before the news that Raheem Mostert was going to be out for the year. We were still operating with the idea he'd come back in 8 weeks. But this one goes with the same line of thinking as that original thought was, which is, look, McCaffrey's not going to be out for the year with a hamstring injury. Now, to your point, maybe he's not going to be as involved when he gets back, but here's my hope. They learned their lesson from last year, or at least McCaffrey learned his lesson from last year with the calf injury. Do not come back before you are ready. And the one thing I've seen so far this season, which was they came in with the idea they didn't want to give him all the workload, but couldn't help themselves because as we saw last night, even against Houston, their offense is just not the same effectiveness without him, even though Chuba Hubbard had a decent game. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, the thing is, when you're talking about an elite talent like Christian McCaffrey, it's very difficult to not give him the ball. Typically when you have a running back that is that good, it's difficult to not give him the ball, especially when he's such a good receiver as well. I think, yeah, it's one of those things where you need to make sure that he's okay. I mean, you've invested a lot of money in him, and you need to make sure that he's 100% before he returns to the field, because otherwise you're going to hurt yourself a couple of times.
Yeah, without a doubt. We actually had a question in here from YouTube. The N, because I got the E and 3 H's and then the ND. Any suggestions on how to trade CMC, or they put in asterisk, trade CMC plus Chuba? I guess they have both and they want outs. I wouldn't. Wouldn't want out of this unless you're getting, a huge return. they didn't really specify whether this is dynasty or redraft in this trade scenario. I'd have to imagine if it is dynasty, you better be getting multiple first-round picks, an RB1 back in return. If it's redraft, I don't know what, because it's a hamstring strain, we might be only talking about a 1 to 2 week injury. I don't know what you're getting back in return that's going to be favorable to you unless it's Derrick Henry.
Yeah, in a redraft league, I'll just hold, because as you say, I don't think I'm going to be getting anything that's going to be remotely close to what he's going to be like. And it's not like with Hubbard, you haven't got a starting running back. He's
Right.
going to be the starter for that team, regardless of if it's top end or not. He's still a starter. In Dynasty, as you say, you need to be getting multiple first rounders. You're talking about a PPR machine, essentially. So yeah, it needs to be a big offer. But I think I'd just stay pat if I was this listener.
I mean, on the flip side, if you're trying to trade for CMC and you're in a league where you know people are like, oh, he had the calf injury, now he's got the hamstring, oh, he's injury prone, I'm done, I'm over this. You know, okay, fine, send a few offers if you want to, just to see if they'll bite on something low. But I'm not going to go crazy go get him either, because we still don't know all the at least not right now. We don't know all the details.
Yeah, I think the only way I think you could maybe do it is if you've got a team who's really only got a shot this year. I'm thinking, let's go real extreme. So in the Superflex League, they've got like Tom Brady and Ben Roethlisberger or something, another old QB. So they've literally got this season to really go with their shot, and they had CMC and he's gone down. Then I'd maybe be looking to try and make an offer with someone who can give them immediate production now, so they can continue that championship pursuit. But yeah, don't go crazy with it. Don't overreact.
Yeah, exactly. That's the big thing. Don't overreact. That's the best thing you could do in fantasy football is not overreact. Some other injury updates from the games we talked about yesterday, which of course was the early Sunday games. We have, for you, I guess they're not so early, but we had Marquise Brown. He did not practice. Antonio Brown is still dealing with the COVID situation. In his situation, yes, he's vaccinated. Because he tested positive, you got to test negative once within a 24-hour period, test negative again, and then you can play. It's going to be hard for him to do that by Monday since he's not a contact. He actually tested positive for it. So I would have other players besides Antonio Brown. I still have my rankings as of now on BillAtFantasySports.com. That probably will be changing as we get more updates and more official reports coming out later today. Saquon and Kenny Golladay, a lot of people were freaking out about this yesterday, that they were very limited in practice. It was raining here on the East Coast quite a bit. The Giants sometimes don't always practice indoors, so kind of keep that in mind. I'm not worried about that. I expect them to be able to go this Sunday. They've been off for an extended amount of time with the 10 days. I think they'll be okay. The other guy I'm watching for, Deontay Johnson, he did not practice. Look, I don't think Deontay's going to play. I don't think he should play. I think if you're a Deontay Johnson owner, you just got to be thankful it didn't wind up being a severe injury, because that did not look good last week at all. And then Higgins has not practiced the last 2 days. He might be out, so bump up Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd's target share if that winds up happening. And Carson Wentz still has not practiced. I'm anticipating to see Brett Hundley, Jacob Eason, some combination of the two, making the Tennessee Titans a streamable defense actually this week, believe it or not, after what we've seen the first 2 weeks. But any of those injuries standing out to you, what do you think?
No, I mean, when you have veterans that aren't training, I'm not really overly worried about it. I mean, yeah, the likes of Saquon, especially for Barkley, I'm really not worried about that. Kenny Golladay, I'm maybe a little bit worried because it's first season in that offense, but if it wasn't, then I wouldn't be worried about it at all. The Carson Wentz situation is a little bit disappointing because I had him as a late round QB in a couple of leagues. So I'm a little bit disappointed. Yeah, a little bit disappointed with that. I also love Michael Pittman. So
and you can't. I mean, outside of John, I talked about this yesterday. Outside of Jonathan Taylor, I don't think he can play anybody. I think we might be losing you a little bit.
Good week. The combination Colts.
I think we might be having some technical difficulties there, Rich. Can you hear me? All right, well, while we try to get Rich back in here, we'll just kind of go through. We'll take a quick break, come back on the other side. We got the Thursday recap for you guys. So stay tuned to the MD's Fantasy Football Show. More to come right after this.
Your client's going away for 10 years. Unless we swap first-round picks.
Fantasy football draft season is upon us. It's time for you to put the PP back in the PPR league with the sponsors of today's show, Manscaped. The leaders in below-the-waist grooming just launched the new Performance Package 4.0. Don't neglect your balls like the Packers front office has been neglecting Aaron Rodgers. Join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get ready for kickoff by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. This will help you tame that Troy Polamalu in your pants. And good news for our international listeners. Their life-changing products are now available in Canada, the UK, across Europe, Australia, South Africa, and Singapore. All with the 20% off and free international shipping when you use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY today.
You're listening to the MD's Fantasy Football Show.
Welcome back, MD Nation. You are on the MD's Fantasy Football Show. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mater. You're watching us live on social media at BellyUpMDFF Show and on YouTube, the MD's Fantasy Football Show channel. I have Rich King from King Fantasy Sports here. I think we got some things ironed out. At least it looks like you're moving around again. You're not frozen anymore. Hi, are you good, Rich? Maybe not. I'm going to guess not. I think you're not hearing me. Okay. Yeah?
Yeah, give me 2 minutes and sort something out.
All right. Well, while you do that, let's go ahead. I'll start recapping the Thursday night game. We'll get Rich in here as soon as he's good to go and talk about last night's game. So we talked about with Christian McCaffrey, his injury. There was other injuries. J.C. Horn sounds like he's got a broken foot. He's going to be out for the next 2 to 3 months or so. Not that that's fantasy relevant, but he was an up-and-coming young rookie, the number 1 draft pick for the Carolina Panthers. So that's going to be big moving forward. When you go and play against the Panthers, it's going to be a little bit more weak in the secondary, so kind of keep that in mind. And that played well for Brandon Cooks. I mean, he was having a good game regardless. But I think that's the biggest takeaway from the Houston Texans. There's only one guy who is fantasy relevant to begin with, and that was Brandon Cooks. And now you know that with Davis Mills in there and not Tyrod Taylor, it does not change a thing for Brandon Cooks. He gets targeted no matter what. And now you know for sure Mills is good enough to get Cooks the ball. 11 targets in this game, 9 receptions, 112 yards. I expect this to continue. I wouldn't say Cooks is matchup proof, but because of his role in this offense, which is pretty much he is the offense, and this team has to be able to come back from behind. Excuse me. This team has to be able to come back from behind. They're going to be able to do this all throughout the season. Let's see if we can get Rich in here. Still working on it?
Yep. No, I think I'm here now.
All right. We got Rich back in. All right. So I'm talking about Brandon Cooks, Houston Texans. He had a big game last night. There was a lot of questions. Is Davis Mills going to be able to be good enough to at least get him the ball, keep him fantasy relevant? Because that's all I really care about on the Houston Texans anyway, because nothing else is fantasy relevant for them. Showed that he was able to do so. He had a huge game, over 100 yards, 9 receptions, 11 targets. What was your takeaway from Brandon Cooks last night?
I think it's as you said, he's the only really fantasy relevant option there. They're looking to get him the ball as often as they can. So even if Mills isn't actually a good QB, which not sure, we've not seen enough to really know yes or no. The volume that he'll get in terms of targets means that he'll still be viable as like a wide receiver 3 or a flex option. I think given the Texans offense, I think it's still a little bit limited in terms like the pure upside. But yeah, as you said, it's the only real part that you'd feel confident in having on that team.
Yeah, and at least, like I said, you can feel confident moving forward, too, because whether it's Mills, whether it's Tyrod, he's going to get his work share pretty much no matter what, making him almost matchup-proof in a weird way because of the game scripts that they're going to be in for most of the season. I actually do need to hit this because it was one of the players that we talked about.
Breaking news.
T. Higgins did suit up for practice today, so he didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday. He does sound like he's going to practice today, so that's a step in the right direction for him. Follow us on social media at BellyUpMDFF Show. We'll keep you up to date as we get more developments around that. in other parts of this game, again, we'll talk about Chuba Hubbard. He looked good. He had an efficient day on the ground. He is fast. He's best when he gets to be in those outside zone runs, which is no surprise with the speed that he has. He struggled a little bit whenever they tried to run it up the A gap or B gap between the tackles. That's going to continue to happen. Royce Freeman will have somewhat of a role in this game, but he is clearly, to me, at least after watching last night, behind Chuba Hubbard. So I'm not worried about this being too much of a committee. I mean, Hubbard's not going to get the workload that McCaffrey was getting. Make no mistake about that. The only thing I would be a little bit concerned about, because we did see a little bit in last night's game, does Royce Freeman wind up with the red zone carries over Chuba Hubbard? So how do you see this moving forward, assuming we have McCaffrey out for a couple of weeks and we're looking at Hubbard, we're looking at a Royce Freeman?
I think Freeman's going to be that guy that is just the ultimate vulture, isn't he? He's going to get those last couple of touches in the red zone, and that's going to kill fantasy owners left, right, and center when they see, as the team gets down into the red zone, they see Hubbard come off the field. But I mean, part of that might have been that they didn't want to overwork Hubbard and then have to just rely on Freeman, because being frank, he wasn't good enough to be the Denver Broncos running back way back when, and clearly did not do enough for the team to retain his services. So I would say Hubbard's probably, he's going to get the workload that you need for him to be probably a solid kind of, I mean, he's still a starter, isn't he? A decent offense, so probably like an RB2 kind of option for you. So maybe some flex weeks, but I think that's kind of where we'll see Royce Freeman. He's going to be a thorn, but he's not worth picking up. I don't think he's going to get a lot of the carries in this offense.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, by the way. I'm right on board. He's going to be an RB2. Royce Freeman will probably get some red zone carries, which will be annoying. But just look at the snap count last night. Hubbard played 40 snaps to Royce Freeman's 11. I mean, there's a big disparity between those two guys. I'm just not worried about it overall. DJ Moore did get banged up a little bit in this game, but he was able to come back in. I'm not too worried about the long term. He had a great game, 8 catches, 126 yards on 12 targets. Terrace Marshall gets 5 targets. Robbie Anderson gets 2. I've been on this train even before the season started. Don't draft Robbie Anderson. If now you have Robbie Anderson, try to get rid of Robbie Anderson. I told you to trade him after the week 1. He's not going to get targets with Sam Darnold. Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore switched roles from what they were a season ago. DJ Moore is running all the routes that Sam Darnold is going to target on a consistent basis that he has targeted throughout his entire career, which is intermediate to short. That's where he's going to operate. Terrace Marshall, because he's lining up the slot, is also operating in that area of the field. The only one who's not, Robbie Anderson, going back to his just big play guy. And if you remember, everyone wants to tell me how great Robbie Anderson was with Sam Darnold, and I don't know where they're getting this from. He had a few big games, but outside in between those big games, he was useless for fantasy football purposes. In fact, I would go as far as to say this about Robbie Anderson.
Prepare to be flushed.
If you need to drop him, I think you can. What do you break down about this Carolina wide receiver group?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think out of all of them, Anderson's the odd one out. It's the same kind of situation that we have in Detroit. I won't talk about that right now, but similar situation is you've got deep threats that they're not used by that QB that doesn't feel comfortable using them. So for me, it's DJ Moore and Terrace Marshall. Robbie Anderson, he, as you said, he had some big games in New York, but they would typically, kind of 3-4 catch games where he just catches a bomb and then it just increases his box score. That's not going to get it done for you each week. If you're in a best ball league, fine. You don't have to worry about that big week when he's going to get that catch. But I'd much prefer either of the other two options because that's just going to give you consistent volume that you can rely upon.
Yeah, totally agree. Sam Darnold had 2 rushing touchdowns in this game, so his fantasy box score is going to look great. He was a streaming option against Houston because it's Houston, and they have a terrible schedule. I think Darnold's he's going to continue to put up decent production until about halfway through the year, and then they start to actually play some playoff teams after that. So what's your takeaway from Sam Darnold thus far? Do you think this is what we're going to continue to get, or do you think he's going to come back down to reality once they start playing some tougher teams?
I think he'll come back to reality. I think right now we might see that he's actually started to learn the offense, so it doesn't drastically fall off. But I mean, I wrote in week 1 in my waiver wire article that the opening schedule for the Panthers was actually really quite nice. So he's got some nice, easy kind of matchups. I'm not expecting long-term success for Sam Darnold, particularly for fantasy, as you say. He was viable in this game because Houston, but that schedule tightens up, from about like halfway. So.
And I wonder how effective those read options at the red zone are going to be moving forward. It's not Christian McCaffrey that everyone's selling out hard on to try to stop in that area too, which is not just this week, but last week is where he's kind of picked up a couple of these rushing touchdowns all of a sudden, which has boosted his value to this point. I want to get another word in from another sponsor of ours. When we come back on the other side, we're going to start to preview the late slate of games on Sunday. So a lot more to come here on the MD's Fantasy Football Show. Stay tuned right after this. The NFL is back in action, and so is winning season at MyBookie. With over $500,000 in contest prize money, winning season makes the big games better and the victories even sweeter. Head to MyBookie.ag and choose from a variety of boost contests and promotions up for grabs, highlighted by the crown jewel of winning season, the famed MyBookie Super Contest. And it only costs $10 to enter. Pick 5 games against the spread each week. Each win earns you a point, and each point gets you closer to the grand prize. If you missed out on week 1, don't even sweat it, because entries are still open, and all it takes is one solid week to get you back in the mix. Don't just take my word for it. Join now and start your winning season with MyBookie today. In order to get you started, make your first deposit at MyBookie.ag and use promo code MDFantasy to instantly receive double your deposit. That's double your money to double your winnings with your first ever deposit using promo code MDFantasy. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie. All right, MD Nation, we're back. We're back on the MD's Fantasy Football Show. You're watching us live on social media at Billy Up MDFF Show or on the MD's Fantasy Football Show YouTube channel. I got Rich King from Fantasy Sports, or King Fantasy Sports, excuse me, on the line. Make sure you check it out, kingfantasysports.com. A must follow on Twitter at @KingFantasy_sports as well. I want to go ahead and get this first game out the way because from a fantasy perspective, there ain't going to be much to talk about, at least not on one side of the ball. That's the New York Jets, the Denver Broncos right off the top. There is literally not a single Jet player I have any interest in playing this week that includes Corey Davis against this, what I think is going to be an elite Denver defense by the end of the season. Is there anybody on the Jets that you have any notes for whatsoever? Oh, by the way, Jameson Crowder is probably not going to play because he has a setback in practice too.
No, I think for me, it would be Corey Davis if I was in a really deep league, but outside of that, no thank you.
Oh, it's just awful. I thought they had a chance to be competent with the new coaching staff, the way they were moving, and that has just all fallen apart with Mekhi Becton, and I have no idea what LaFleur is trying to do out there. You can only rotate players when you have depth. When you don't have talent, you don't have depth. Therefore, you can't rotate players. Pick your favorites, pick your best, play them. This is my 2 cents. But anyway, let's go to Denver. Denver has a lot more to talk about. Denver has a lot more to be excited about. I got Melvin Gordon as my top 20 running back. I have Javonte Williams at 29. The reason why I have Melvin Gordon 9 spots ahead of Javonte is because he's still been more involved in the passing game, even though Javonte's still been a little bit ahead in the playing time overall at snap count and carries. First of all, I think you can play both of them. Where are you at on Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams for this game and for the rest of the season, frankly?
Yeah, the way they're splitting that backfield is nearly 50-50. Williams has got the edge there, but as you said, Melvin Gordon's got the he's getting more of the receiving work. I think that we're probably going to see that for the majority of the season. We might towards the end of the season we might see the team phase out Melvin Gordon with his contract situation, just to see a little bit more of what they have in Javonte Williams and if he can take that workload. But I think you could play both of them if you have both of them. If you're in a dynasty league and you have them, I think they're both very playable, particularly because of this matchup. If I had to choose one, I'd probably choose Javonte Williams out of the 2. But I mean, it's really, really close, so I could argue it either way.
Yeah, and like I said, it's just the passing work so far is kind of favored Gordon. It's the only reason I went with him a little bit higher in this game. But I think the rest of the season on a week-to-week basis with all matchups being equal, moving forward, they're both RB3s. They're both flex plays. And then you have some of these games where they had the Jaguars last week. They have the Jets this week where one of them will probably get inside my top 24. And that's just kind of have to play it out. Melvin is an injury risk. I do think at some point Javonte Williams will get the opportunity to take over this backfield, so don't fret if you drafted Javonte Williams with higher expectations. If you did that, hopefully you did so with the idea, knowing that it probably wouldn't be till the second half of the year where he really hits where you want him to. Teddy Bridgewater is a streaming quarterback for me. He had a nice game against Jacksonville. I see no reason why he can't have a nice game against New York Jets. QB 15, a streaming option. I still think you have better options to go out there since it's not a bye week and there aren't too many quarterbacks that you're leaning on that are hurt. But again, nice option here. Maybe a DFS option is contrarian play. Have you liked what you've seen out of Teddy Bridgewater within this offense thus far to really maintain the rest of these guys the rest of the season?
Yeah, the thing with Teddy Bridgewater is, for me, he's had a bit of criticism with the schedule in that it's not been the hardest opposition, but you can only beat what's in front of you, right? So far he's looked good. He's looked composed, which is actually one thing that I think this offense really needed. Was you needed like a Teddy Bridgewater, Kirk Cousins, that kind of just steady hand. Drew Lock was winning them some plays, but he was giving up massive interceptions at bad times. So you needed something that was a little bit more conservative to keep these guys going. And I think that with Teddy Bridgewater, they've certainly got that guy who's going to be consistent.
I think you hit the nail on the head right there. Drew Lock was too inconsistent, too all over the place. This team has everything in place. They just need a quarterback to basically, to use a basketball reference, to play point guard. Just give the ball up to the guys where they need it in space. That's all you got to do. I think back, because Pat Shurmur's the offensive coordinator, I think back to the Minnesota Vikings when he had Case Keenum and he had Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. All he did was just make sure he got the ball to his weapons when he needed to, and he wound up having such a great season that the Denver Broncos signed him to a stupid contract the following year. I think something similar could be happening here with Teddy Bridgewater under Pat Shurmur with all these weapons. Speaking of the other weapons that he's been throwing the ball to, Courtland Sutton came back in a big way last week. He's got a nice juicy matchup here against the New York Jets. I'm aggressive on him. The target share is getting consolidated his way without Jerry Jeudy. I got him at wide receiver 13 heading into this week, so a very high-end wide receiver too, and I wouldn't be surprised if he cracks the top 12.
I'm not that high on Courtland Sutton this week, but that's fine. I always still have this hidden unrequited love for Tim Patrick. He just always seems to appear at the worst of times for Courtland Sutton, at least. So he's still going to be involved in this offense. But I mean, one receiver here is going to go off. I mean, it could even be Noah Fant. I know we haven't talked about tight end yet, but the way that they use Noah Fant is essentially as a wide receiver as well. With Jerry Jeudy out, then the targets are mainly going to be going to those two guys. I think Tim Patrick will have the odd little magic play, but there we go.
Yeah, I mean, well, Tim Patrick had the touchdown last week, and he's let Courtland Sutton go off. I agree. They'll get worked in. Patrick comes in at wide receiver 51 for me, so he's a wide receiver 5. If you need a spot start, he's got potential for a touchdown this game. Moving to Noah Fant. I love the targets. I love the targets he actually got in that first game when Jerry Jeudy was still out there. They're looking for him more than I thought they would. I was a little bit worried about Fant and where he was being drafted at, considering the amount of weapons this team had. Now, Jeudy going down certainly consolidates that, but even in that week 1, before he did, Noah Fant was almost going toe-to-toe with Jeudy as far as targets are concerned. He's getting utilized. He's my tight end 8. I think he's just a top 8 play every single week.
Yeah, I definitely. With the target share that he's getting and the tight end position being what it is, I mean, you've got those elite few, and then you've got those touchdown dependent guys, which they're great when they're firing. Like, you feel like you've somehow found a cheat code. But I'd much rather a Noah Fant, who I know is just going to get solid production week in, week out, than a guy who's going to spike.
Yeah, and there's one thing I have to get used to saying. It used to be like, oh, outside the top 4 tight ends, they're all the same. I don't care. This year, actually, I think we could say inside the top 8. I think there's a top 8 group of tight ends that are pretty solid from week to week. And then after that, it gets to be all the same where they're all streaming. But, I mean, you have your top 3 in Kelsey and Waller and George Kittle. And then you have a mixture of TJ Hawkinson and Kyle Pitts. And I know Mark Andrews hasn't been great yet, but he's right there. I'm not losing confidence on him. Then you got Gronk and you got Noah Fant. And those guys I expect to be pretty consistent all throughout the season. So I think we actually have 8 tight ends that we can count on to be decent. And then the rest are the same. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree entirely with that. I think there's yeah, there's that top tier, then there's a couple of guys in that middle tier, and then yeah, you've got Gronk, who seems like every week I keep thinking, nah, he can't keep scoring touchdowns and be fantasy relevant, and then every single week it's just, oh no, okay, score again, no worries. So yeah, I think outside of that, then you're rotating, streaming in and out. I think that's how I'm viewing it.
No, agree. Yeah, Gronk, I mean, 4 touchdowns in 2 games. What I've been more surprised about Gronk, of course, the touchdowns are surprising, but I've just been surprising in that offense with that many weapons. The target share he's had the past 2 weeks has been a bit surprising. Has been a bit surprising to me. And we'll talk about that game soon. I want to get to the Miami Dolphins and the Las Vegas game. We'll start on the Dolphins side of the ball because we can pretty much abbreviate that because Tua is going to be out and Jacoby Brissett is going to be in. And as a result, kind of like the Jets, it's not quite as bad, but I don't want to touch a Dolphin if I can help it. All 3 receivers coming in my 50 range. Will Fuller's 50, Waddle 56, Devontae Parker 59, Myles Gaskin 36. So he's at the very low end of my RB3 when it comes to 12-man half-point PPR leagues. And I just not excited about anybody in this group. Mike Gesicki's well outside my streaming range. Is there anything of the Dolphins you think you can play without Tua Tagovailoa, or what's something you're looking for Brissett out there to maybe give you some confidence moving forward if Tua is going to miss multiple weeks?
I don't really have that much confidence if Tua is going to be missing multiple weeks, unless Brissett manages to somehow find some magic that he had in spells when he was in Indy.
Right.
I think the only option that I'd actually be really kind of confident playing would be Jason Sanders at kicker, because I think you're going to see a lot of drives stall out, and that's about it.
Yeah, and I think the question is going to have to be how many drives you're going to see. There wasn't one drive against the Buffalo Bills a week ago. But yeah, it's just a shame. Hopefully, Tua will be back soon because there is some fantasy talent here to be had. I'm not dropping anybody. I mean, if you have Fuller, I'm standing strong. Waddle standing strong. Gaskin standing strong. If you want to drop Parker, I think you can, because I think the return of Will Fuller is really going to kill his value even when Tua returns. But I'm not going to drop anybody. I'm going to wait for Tua to come back because there's fantasy value to be had here. We move to the Vegas side. I have Derek Carr at QB 19. I recognize he's been very, very good the past 2 weeks against 2 very, very good defenses. I do consider the Dolphins still to be a very good defense, although they're going to have some struggles because of that offensive side of the ball. I know I might be a little bit too low, but I had a harder time getting him higher than that this week. Raiders might not have to do as much through the air against the Dolphins to win this game either, so kind of going into my equation there. But where do you have Derek Carr this week? And is he, is this guy really a top-end streaming option, top 12 quarterback the rest of the way? I can't imagine he is, but what do you think?
Not the rest of the way. I mean, I think he's going to have spot start, so I'd be okay streaming him in this game. I think where you're going to really see his value and where, I've certainly been putting him in my lineups is in Superflex leagues, where you're looking that much deeper. I think I've been pleasantly surprised by the Raiders' offense, to be honest. I thought that they were really going to struggle this season, and so far they've looked competent, which I think is the biggest compliment I can give them at the moment. So I think you can stream him, but if there are better options out there, I'd prefer Teddy Bridgewater to Derek Carr, I think, this week.
Yeah, as do I. You and I are the same way when it comes to the Raiders. I came out on the Tuesday show and we did the waiver wire report, and I said, look, I will give the Raiders credit because I bashed them all summer long. So I wanted to give them some credit because they beat 2 tough AFC North teams. I don't want to be like I wasn't recognizing that they didn't do that. However, in my heart of hearts, I still don't believe that this team is actually going to be an above 500 or borderline playoff team by the end of the year. I feel confident in saying that they're going to be, 7-10 or 8-9 or less this season. I still don't look efficiency wise. That running game is still non-existent as far as efficiency wise. That offensive line is bad. What's been surprising is Derek Carr for the past 2 weeks. He's been aggressive. He's been able to get the ball out. He's been able to put up a ton of yardage with minimal weapons. But that's the other thing, too. Outside of Darren Waller, there's not a receiver I trust on this team either. So I just don't buy into that this team's going to be way better than we thought they were. I will say this, that defense is not as incompetent as I thought it was. And I think that's been the biggest difference as to why they've been able to be a surprise the first 2 weeks. But fantasy-wise, it still stays the same for me. I mean, I have Kenny Drake inside my top 36. I have him at 34 this week because of involved in the passing game. But that's it. He's a low-end RB3, even in the absence of Josh Jacobs, who, by the way, is expected to miss again. I mean, he hasn't practiced the last 2 days. I know he was out there in a red non-contact jersey the other yesterday, I believe that was, but he still went down as it did not practice for the day. We're not expecting him to play. Peyton Barber comes in off the street and gets handed 13 carries, and he's going to get the red zone looks, and he comes as my RB42 on the week. For me, Kenyon Drake was actually a droppable player. Not necessarily this week while Josh Jacobs is out, but when Jacobs comes back, one of the big things I thought Kenyon Drake had as far as upside was that Jacobs goes down, he's going to look at the full workload. Now we know that's never going to be the case. If you're willing to bring Peyton Barber in off the street and hand up 13 carries, you're never going to let Kenyon Drake have the full workload. So where are you at on Kenyon Drake rest of the season? How much do you want to roster this guy?
Yeah, that's what you've said is exactly right. I mean, I'm really confused about what the Raiders were doing with Kenyon Drake. They paid him a lot of money, considering that they're not going to be putting him out on the field. Seems absolutely absurd to me. So I'd 100% agree with what you're saying. I think if you were thinking that Kenyon Drake was worth having on your team because he was going to get the workload if Josh Jacobs did go down, well, you've just had it confirmed that that's not the case. So outside of really deep PPR leagues, yeah, I think you can drop him. I think there's probably some better shots that you can take on the waiver wire.
And just to illustrate my point once again with the Raiders wide receivers, I know Ruggs had the big game a week ago. He's still my wide receiver 61 coming into this week. You're not playing anybody. Just one good game does not suddenly erase the inefficiencies that he's had. And then Darren Waller's my tight end too, which I think is pretty straightforward and pretty simple. So let's move to the top game. Let's move to the game that's going to be most exciting on the week. Tampa Bay Rams. Very excited for this one. I mean, for you, are you going to stay up and watch this whole game on Sunday Live, or are you going to have to go back and rewatch it again the next day?
So I'll probably have to go to bed, and then I'll watch it the next day. So it's okay for me though, because I kind of stay away from everything in the morning, and I'll just I'll bring it up and just have it on. So I think that for me is probably one of the games of the week. I think these two teams, we could be seeing a preview of the NFC Championship game.
100%. We should be seeing a preview of the NFC Championship game. Actually, while we're on that subject, before we get into this, though, I want to ask you, what is it like out there in the UK when there is a London game and you guys are playing on your time and it's a big event? Like, what walk us through it. What is that like? Because I mean, I don't know. Most of the listeners probably don't know.
So the games when they're over here, it's more of a carnival atmosphere. So you'll have everyone's wearing jerseys of all different teams. So you'll see 32 different teams, the jerseys. It's just really a big social event, almost with a game thrown in. So the sport over here is growing, but typically it wasn't that popular until the game started coming over on a more regular basis. And now it's just about I catch up with people that I chat with online and things like that. So it's quite a nice like community atmosphere, I guess. But yeah, there's being Brits. There's a lot of drinking involved and attempting to be as American as possible with like chili dogs and stuff like that. But yeah, no, it's fun. When they did they would have been really early morning kickoffs for you. So then when they had the 4 games, I used to not be a big fan of that because typically I wouldn't get this is such a first world problem. I wouldn't get the network coverage on my mobile to be able to set my lineups based on all of the injury news. So that was a bit of an issue. So I used to sometimes have my wife, and this is the dedication that I'll show to my leagues. I used to have my wife sat at home and I'd phone her and get her to tell me the injury news and then her to set my lineup.
That's awesome. And good on your wife for really willing to help you out, because I'm pretty sure if I called my wife, she'd be like, what? No. Like, I'm not doing that. That is all. No, it's good to hear the sports growing over there. I mean, there's a lot of people over in the UK that I talk to now and have a real fanhood for the NFL. So it's exciting to see them, especially for you. And I mean, last week I had Murph on from 5 Yard Rush. So like you guys are really, really popular. And I hope that keeps increasing for you guys too. Let's get into this game though. I don't want to keep everybody else waiting because this is the big preview matchup. In short, if you have a fantasy relevant player on either one of those two teams, you play them. Now, I will say this game in my mind could go one of two ways. It could either be a shootout because both offenses are really, really good, or we could see a struggling defensive battle because both defenses are also pretty good. And this is a game in which there's going to be high intensity on both sides. So what's the game flow you're expecting out of this?
I think you say so. It's going to be one of those two extremes. I think the way that I see it panning out is I think it's more likely to be a bit of a defensive struggle to start, and then I think you'll start seeing the offenses maybe progress in the second half. Yeah, so I think Tom Brady's too good to not make adjustments. That's my take. He's a coach on the field, isn't he? So he's too good to not make adjustments, and I think he'll find a way to get things moving. Matt Stafford as well is an upgrade over Jared Goff. At least he doesn't see, he's not like a deer in headlights with a pass rush. So, I mean, both of these offenses are both really exciting. You've got top defenses. This is why, for me, this is the game to watch. As you said, if you've got someone who's remotely fantasy viable in this game, plug them in and just hope it goes to your guy.
Right. Exactly. I mean, there's so many weapons on Tampa Bay. Now, again, Antonio Brown, at this point, very much considered a long shot to play. We don't have a ton of detail. We probably won't until about 4 o'clock over here in the East Coast at some point when we get the last practice report out. That's the last report we're expecting to hear before they travel tomorrow, as far as did he test negative by any chance. Considering him a long shot to play, if he did play, I have him ranked at wide receiver 34 right now. So again, I would plug and play him, but don't anticipate him doing that. Have other options available to you. If he doesn't, that'll boost up Mike Evans and Chris Godwin's target shares a little bit, maybe even Gronk Gronkowski to some degree. But I do have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin both as top 24 receivers, both as wide receiver 2s that could really have bigger weeks. The big thing I'm going to be watching for, though, is Jalen Ramsey. He's been playing not really necessarily on the outside and shadowing. He's been kind of playing from that star slot position and operating in and out there. They kind of, Raheem Morris has built an entire defense around Ramsey actually playing more in the inside part of the field. So there's a chance here that Chris Godwin, not Mike Evans, is going to wind up getting the Jalen Ramsey shadow, in which case I love Evans for a touchdown here. But how do you see that breaking down between that secondary and that wide receiver matchup?
Trying to guess Tampa Bay's wide receiver that's going to go off any given week is pretty difficult. I mean, if I was going to go with one, I'd probably go Mike Evans, as you say, just because even if he does get that special attention from Jalen Ramsey, Mike Evans is such a physical being that I think he can deal with Ramsey to a degree. So if I had to choose between the two, I'd go Mike Evans. But I mean, I think you might see Jalen Ramsey being moved around to just try and quell different players at different times. So, well, I guess we'll see. But Mike Evans would be the guy that I would prefer to start over Chris Godwin.
Or it could wind up, with Brown being out, could wind up being Scotty Miller. Who knows? Oh, yeah. But if you have a Tampa Bay wide receiver, you roll him out there every single week. You ride with him. Gronk Gronkowski is a tight end 6 for me. You're playing him, obviously, the backfield. So I think there's actually some reason to trust Leonard Fournette. And I haven't been about trusting this backfield at all this season. But I think there's some reason to trust him after the last 2 weeks. Ronald Jones, whether it be by fumble or missing block assignments, has found himself in a doghouse 2 weeks in a row. Giovani Bernard has not established himself in that James White third down automatic role out there. Maybe he will at some point this season, but I do feel like if that was going to happen, it would have been starting to rear its head by now, and it hasn't been the case. So Leonard Fournette comes in at RB 32 for me. I think he's just not expecting a big game out of him, but I think he does have a safe floor because he's the only running back who's allowed to run and catch the ball, and he's playing the most snaps right now. Where are you at on Leonard Fournette?
Yeah, I think you've said it quite well there. I think the only running back that I would trust on this offense would be Leonard Fournette. For me, it's actually more because of his involvement in the red zone. So you might have seen on King Fantasy Sports, we've got a red zone tool. So you can sort the touches that they've had in red zone, and Leonard Fournette has had more touches than any of the other RBs in that area. In fact, he's one of the leaders in the league in terms of usage in that area. So for me, if I'm looking at a running back and I'm not quite sure, I'm always going to, if it's really, really close on other areas of the field, I'm always going to lean to the guy who gets the touches near the goal line, because we've seen you get one touchdown that's worth 60 yards. So yeah, as you said, Leonard Fournette seems to be getting his usage as well. So he would be the guy that I'd have. I wouldn't be expecting a big week from him, and I wouldn't be relying on something from him. But if you are in a kind of do or die matchup, Leonard Fournette's the type of dice roll you can have, because if we're talking next week and he scored a couple of touchdowns and run for 60 yards, I wouldn't be surprised. I could see it happening. So that would Ronald Jones have that? I don't think so, and that's ultimately why I'd go with Fournette.
Yeah, I mean, rest of season, at this point in time, I still consider this to be a volatile situation. However, I went into the in the offseason, I kept saying, if something shakes out, there might be some value here. It looks like it's starting to shake out with Leonard Fournette being the guy, so there will be some value moving forward. I think he'll consistently be an RB3 until we see something different. But Ronald Jones is just, they're not looking to play him like they were at the beginning of last season. I don't think this might be the you get this game, you get that game, inconsistencies that we were having a season ago. It might be going towards Fournette. So something just to keep watch for rest of season value purposes too. We go to the Rams side of the ball, and Henderson dealing with the rib cartilage injury. McVay seems to still be holding out hope that he's going to play. I'd be shocked. I don't know how much I want to play a running back against the number one rush defense who has very hurt ribs, which, I mean, when you have hurt ribs, it hurts to laugh. It hurts to breathe. It hurts to be alive. And you're going to go out there and be tackled by the number one rush defense in all of the NFL. So I don't know. Would not play. If you have Darrell Henderson, even if he's active, I wouldn't play him. I wouldn't. I'd have him outside my top 36. And the same thing goes for Sony Michel. If Henderson doesn't play and Michel is the lead guy, I don't want to play Michel either because of this rush defense. We've seen top running backs do absolutely nothing against this team. I think it's going to be an all Matthew Stafford throwing the ball around type of game. But, I mean, do you have more confidence than I do in this backfield at all?
No, I think you've said it quite well there. I think Darrell Henderson, last I checked, you need to breathe in order to run, right? And if it hurts to breathe, even if you're wearing a flak jacket, which is no doubt what we're going to hear, he's going to wear a flak jacket and he's going to play through the pain. I don't care who you are. When you get that first massive hit into your ribs, don't want it anymore. So you might be really frustrated. See Darrell Henderson's going to be active. Think, slotting him to my lineup, not a problem. And then he lasts like a quarter before he's out for the game. So Sony Michel is worth somewhat interesting, but I think that you're right. It's going to be Matthew Stafford moving the ball through the air. So when we said start any fantasy relevant option, maybe don't start the Rams running back, but right. Outside of that, I think you'll be okay.
But you can throw on this Tampa Bay defense. So that's where I do get a little bit excited. Matthew Stafford, one of my must-starts of the week. He comes in a QB8 for me. And both wide receivers, Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, and I know Kupp's been great this year, but Woods too, I have them both inside the top 10. Cooper Kupp at number 4, Robert Woods at 10. The targets have been there for Woods. I know he hasn't had the big gaudy games Kupp has had the first 2 weeks, but the targets have been there. The snap count's been there. He's playing just as much, running just as many routes as Cooper Kupp is to this point. It's just a matter of, does the ball go his way that game or not? Or does he have the big game that they are not? This very much sets up to be a game in which both of them can have huge games, but I think Robert Woods is going to get on the box score in a big way for you guys this week, coming at my top 10 wide receiver. Where are you at on Stafford and Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods?
Yeah, I think Stafford is already cemented that relationship with Cooper Kupp. Now, the thing is with Robert Woods is he's not being used in and around the red zone, whereas Cooper Kupp is. The thing is, Robert Woods, he's not a bad receiver. You don't become a bad receiver, from the ability he showed last season to now. He's not a bad receiver. So I think you'll see with the volume that I'm expecting, I think you'll see that he'll have a decent game, because this Tampa defense as well, it's too good to realize Cooper's just getting all of the attention, and for them just to go all that way, and then Stafford will just say, okay, well, my easy pass is to Robert Woods, who's still not a bad receiver. So I think this might be a bit of a get right game. So if you were a Robert Woods owner and you've been worried, then I think this would be if he doesn't do it after this game, then depending, if it becomes a defense on defense thing, then don't worry, there'll be another game. But if it is a shootout and he doesn't get the ball this time, then I'd start be worried. But I think this will be a get right game for him.
Yeah, I agree with you. And even the first 2 weeks, even though he wasn't putting up the numbers of Cooper Kupp, it's still like it wasn't bad. He was putting up solid numbers. He wasn't losing you your week, which is where I get the confidence of, like, if that's the worst we're going to see of Robert Woods, I feel pretty good about what we're going to see for the rest of the season, too. I also have Tyler Higbee making my top 12 at number 12 on the dot. Tight ends this week, so I do still have him as a tight end 1. Again, he's getting all the playing time. I know last week he was kind of left out a little bit, But if this is going to be a throw it around game, I think even if it's a defensive struggle, the Rams are going to have to throw the ball to move the ball at all. I think Higbee's going to get involved here too. So I think he's a top streaming option for me this week. Where are you at on Tyler Higbee?
Yeah, I think he's a streaming option. I mean, it as we said with Noah Fant, outside of those top kind of 8 guys, you kind of make an argument for a lot of players. So I think Higbee should be seeing a decent volume in this. How much the Rams are likely going to have to pass the ball. Just to go back to what you were saying about the Robert Woods Cup situation, it's one of these situations where when you're so I'm going to give you a real life example, and I always talk about food because I like my food. So it's like if you're out and you order a burger, you're happy with a burger, but if the guy next to you orders a steak, now you don't feel so good about your burger, right? That's kind of how I view it.
No, I mean, that's the perfect analogy. That is the perfect analogy. That's a perfect American analogy, too. We're going to take a quick break, come back on the other side. I want to get the word in from our sponsor. We still got more games to talk about. We got the mailbag segment at the end. So we got a lot more to talk about in the MD's Fantasy Football Show. So everybody stay tuned right after this. One of the best sponsors of the show is named SimBull. That's SIMBULL. SimBull, where Wall Street meets sports gambling in this innovative app. The SimBull brings the fun of being able to play for the long term by purchasing, selling, and trading stocks of your teams. When your teams win, you win a payout. Well, when they lose, you don't lose money. The value of your team's share is all that matters, and it's easy to use. Just download the SimBull app on your Play Store and use the promo code MDSFantasy for a $10 deposit of at least $10 or more. Join the fun of investing in your team for the long haul, where the sportsbook edge is put back into your hands as the player. For the latest and most fun in sports gambling, download SimBull and again, use the promo code MDSFantasy for your $10 deposit bonus today.
You're listening to the MD's Fantasy Football Show.
Welcome back in, MD Nation. You are listening to the MD's Fantasy Football Show on social media at Billy Up MDFF Show on the MD's Fantasy Football Show YouTube channel. And of course, you always catch us after the fact on your favorite pod streaming app, iHeart, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, Spreaker, wherever. We're everywhere. And tonight we'll be on from 6 to 7:30 on the Unhinged Radio Network on unhingedsn.airtime.pro. Before we continue on with our preview of the late slate and the primetime games, I actually have to hit this drop real quick.
Breaking news.
So I did forget at the beginning of the show to mention the Ravens have a player who has contracted COVID. They haven't released that player's name yet, so we don't know. A lot of people are speculating, is it Lamar Jackson, even though they came out yesterday and said he was dealing with a stomach flu. It had nothing to do with COVID. Lamar Jackson back in the building and practicing. So that should squash any ideas that it was Lamar Jackson who had COVID-19. We still don't know who that player is, but it wasn't Lamar. So breathe easy. If you have Lamar, breathe easy, Raven fans. Okay, now we got that out the way. Let's talk about the Seattle-Minnesota game. It's not going to be as great of a clinic as the Tampa Bay Rams game, but we might have another shootout on our hands, just be just as exciting, especially for fantasy football purposes. Let's talk about the Minnesota side first, because we got to talk about Dalvin Cook. He has not practiced the last 2 days. He is that one player that if he could go the whole week without practicing and still suit up and get 25 carries on Sunday, it's just hard to know exactly that's going to break down. Hopefully he has some activity today. But what's your confidence level with Dalvin Cook going into this week if he does play? Or what's your confidence level with Alexander Mattison if Cook can't go?
I think I have the same confidence level regardless. So I think Cook, will play, and he'll probably see a decent workload. Like, I think he might be in for a bit of a workload, which is maybe why they're not putting him out in practice as much. Like, give him a bit of rest in the week, and then let's go on Sunday. We saw exactly what Derrick Henry could do to this Seattle Seahawks defense, and I felt a bit bad for the defenders at times when you got a guy that big running at you. But I think we'll see a similar kind of workload for Dalvin Cook. I mean, the Seahawks basically just the Titans, gave them the blueprint to how to have success against Seattle. So I think if Cook doesn't suit up, then I've got confidence in Mattison to just do the same. But whenever I've said that, that's always when you used to typically get a Mike Boone week. So I don't know who the third string running back is now, but
Well, be Amir Abdullah. I think we'll be. It's got to happen. Alexander Madison is a good running back when he's out there in spelling for Dalvin Cook. I have to imagine one of these times when he goes in there and actually starts for Cook, not only will he be able to stay healthy himself throughout that game, but he'll actually be able to have a good game. I do believe that could happen here. Yeah, if Cook doesn't play, Madison's a must play. Maybe he's not an RB1, but he is an RB2 for me at the bare minimum. Dalvin Cook's my number 3 running back on the week in spite of his injury. First of all, for a few reasons. Right from the get-go, Mike Zimmer kept calling us, it's a minor ankle sprain. He's been downplaying this ankle sprain for the entire time. So one I could take out of that is it's definitely not major. I can take that with some confidence. But with that, and then you followed up a couple days later with his comments of, if Dalvin Cook's out there, he's our guy. He makes our offense run. He's going to get a full workload. We won't limit him at all. Mike Zimmer is feeling the heat. They are 0-2. They underachieved last year. He knows he's got to win. He's got to turn around this season. If Dalvin Cook can go, I'm not worried about his workload getting limited in any capacity. And after watching Derrick Henry, not that he's the same type of runner, but we know what Dalvin Cook can do. He's my number 3 running back, regardless of his injury. I'm not worried about it in case anybody else was. Kirk Cousins is a streaming quarterback for me. He comes in at QB 14. He actually finished, I believe he finished at QB 6 last week, if I'm not mistaken, in a what could be a similar game script, another shootout type of ball game. And when you have weapons like Jefferson and Thielen and emerging star in KJ Osborne, apparently, yeah, Kirk Cousins can have good games. We've seen him do it. This is another one where that very well may happen, especially in Minnesota. So if you're looking for a streaming quarterback option out there, you don't like your matchup, Kirk Cousins is a way to go.
Yeah, the only thing, I think Kirk Cousins would have probably been picked up already. So you might have missed your shot on him if you don't like your matchup. But if he is out there, then yeah, definitely pick him up. I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be in for a good week. With the condensed target share that he has going to Thielen and Jefferson and the new guy on the street. This offense is actually really, really good. I used to always be down on the Vikings offense, but it seems like it's actually kind of firing now. So that's good to see. And same for Seattle as well. I'll let you start off with the Seattle preview, but yeah, I'm excited for both parts, to be honest.
Yeah, well, just to hit on your Minnesota point, the offense is firing off because that defense did improve, apparently. It's still just as bad. So because they continue to be bad, the offense actually has to have more volume in the passing game, be more aggressive than I think Mike Zimmer would typically like it to be. But as long as this continues to be the case for that defense, and I think we'll see this week, I think Anthony Barr comes back. He's a big thing. He's a big reason why they've had no pass rush up until this point. So we'll see if that changes anything. But because this defense isn't very good, there's a higher volume than you would typically anticipate for a Minnesota Viking offense. I think that's why you're seeing all these guys fire off. I think that's why you're seeing room now for a KJ Osborne, who comes in at wide receiver 41 for me this week. I think he is a boomer bust play in what could be a high-scoring matchup. He's probably going to be a favorite DFS play of mine as well. And then, of course, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, I have him at 14 and 15 back-to-back. Thielen being a little bit ahead because he has had the touchdowns to this point. But, of course, they're all must-plays. Let's dive in the Seattle side that you wanted to get into here. Russell Wilson comes in at QB2 for me right off the top. You got to love the matchup, and the only reason he's not number 1 is because I got Patrick Mahomes against the Chargers at number 1. I mean, that's the only reason. This, I think, is a get. We talk about Robert Woods getting right. I think it's a get right game for DK Metcalf. I know he's been overshadowed by Tyler Lockett, like Robert Woods was overshadowed by Cooper Kupp, but similar to that situation, A, similar offense because you got Shane Waldron who came from the Rams to begin with, but B, he's been running just as many routes, getting just as many targets, and it's still a consolidated 1A, 1B situation where either one of these guys can go off. I have them both inside my top 10. I have Tyler Lockett at wide receiver 3. I have DK Metcalf at wide receiver 7. I love this, and I think the DK Metcalf owners out there, I think this is a good get-right opportunity for you because Patrick Peterson, he can't hack it anymore. Where are you at on these guys?
Yeah, that's exactly where I am. I was on a DFS podcast earlier this week where we were talking about Metcalf and Lockett. So I'm 100% on that train. I think Metcalf is too good to be the player that we've seen out on film and out on the field at the moment. So I think this will be a get right game. I think Russell Wilson will try and show him a bit more love than he has in the last couple of weeks. And I see this being a shootout, so I don't want to start either defense. But all of the offensive pieces that are relevant, get them out there and have some fun with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Get as many. Look, this is one where you want to play Wilson and Metcalf and Lockett, and you want to throw Gerald Everett into your lineup as a cheap tight end streamer option. Just go ahead, go for it, because you're going to probably be on the way to winning in your DFS lineups. The other guy I'm excited about, Chris Carson. Now, some people have been kind of negative about him because, like, oh, without the touchdowns, he's not getting, he's not getting the workload as much. The running game in general is not being involved as much. I'm like, look, as long as you're on a high-scoring offense and you are a workhorse running back, which Chris Carson is, and you are going to get touchdowns, that's what's going to come your way. And he's an RB13 for me this week. He's a high-end RB2. Wouldn't be surprised if he cracked the top 12. Not worried about Travis Homer. I know played some extra third downs last week. Travis Homer is just a guy. Travis Homer is a bum. We've seen Chris Carson be very effective in the passing game. I'm not worried about that for the long term. Chris Carson's definitely a top must play for me the rest of the way, and I'd be very excited to have him.
Yeah, I'd agree. Chris Carson constantly feels like the type of guy who every draft season is overlooked because he doesn't put up those sexy plays, right? He's almost like a newer school of Frank Gore. Like he just 3 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards, which is, you're not going to see it on red zone. So it's not exciting, but those are the types of players that are just going to constantly grind in, week out. You're going to be able to rely on them, plug him in as your RB2. Don't have to think about it. I don't know what more there is to say. Like, if you stop being down on Chris Carson, that's the only thing I can say.
Stop calling him more injury prone than any other running back in the NFL, because it's not true. It's exactly to your point. Just because he's not breaking runs like Dalvin Cook or stiff arming guys like Derrick Henry doesn't mean this isn't a guy who's just going to consistently be a great running back for you guys. So stop panicking. I'm not worried about Travis Homer either. I just heard a lot of that this week, and it kind of drove me crazy. Let's get into that Sunday night matchup. That'll be interesting, and this is actually my favorite team, the 49ers, and I'm not happy about it as a 49ers fan heading into this game, actually. Speaking on that, what is your favorite team?
I'm a Packers fan. So
you are? Oh, perfect. This worked out perfect. I didn't even plan this, guys. This is perfect. Absolutely perfect. That's awesome. You're a Packers fan. Okay. Well, let's start off with the Green Bay Packers. I have must plays, as you would expect, for Rodgers and Jones and Devontae Adams. Adams is my number one receiver on the week. Jones makes my top 5. Rodgers is in my top 6. And Robert Tonyan, I have at 11 for tight end, so I have him as a streaming option. We'll start with Tonyan because I think there's a little more to say about that. There's a lot of people who are like, well, I'm not happy about his target share. It's not going up any. I'm like, well, that's not what made him valuable last year. It was touchdowns. Outside of Devontae Adams, I guess I should say Aaron Jones too after the performance he had on Monday. But I think the number 2 target, especially in the red zone, is Robert Tonyan. So the touchdowns, I don't expect to put up 12 maybe with the target share he's had, but I still think you're going to put up 8, which makes him a top 10 tight end most years. So where are you at on Robert Tonyan?
Yeah, when we were talking about Noah Fant earlier, I said, you're looking for those guys that have target share or those ones that have like red zone madness. And Tonyan is one of those guys who has red zone madness. If you're looking at target share for Tonyan, he's never that guy. He was the guy who was just getting red zone looks and putting up 2 touchdowns from 3 targets. That's the player he was. So I don't think if you drafted him and you should have fully known that that's the player he is, you need to just keep putting him in there, because on an Aaron Rodgers led offense, he's still going to get looks in the red zone. My advice to anyone is don't draft someone knowing what they are or aren't, and then get angry about what they are or aren't. Like, you drafted Robert Tonyan to be a red zone guy. Let him be the red zone guy and don't start getting worried about his target share.
Right. Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. Exactly. Why these guys draft him? Because they get the sky hopes in their eyes when they draft these guys. Oh, he could do this. He's a red zone guy. He's a touchdown guy. And that's not going to go away, because, I mean, they talk about, we want to get Randall Cobb more involved. There's no other receiver in this rotation who's ever going to be involved on a consistent basis. It's Devontae Adams, and then Robert Tonyan is that other red zone guy. So that's why I'm not worried about it there. This is, on paper, a tougher matchup for Aaron Jones, but as long as they get him involved in the passing game like they did against Detroit, I'm not worried about him busting, let's say, in this game, where he's sometimes that Jekyll and Hyde guy. That's why I have him at number 5. I'm not worried about the matchup with him against San Francisco, which outside of Fred Warner, very banged up at linebacker. So if they do get him involved in the passing game, there is a mismatch to be had for him this week.
Yeah, I think the way they scheme this offense as well is that they look to get Aaron Jones in space, whether that's handing the ball off immediately or Aaron Rodgers just dumping the ball off very quickly. I think the volume will be there for him. AJ Dillon's obviously gets involved in some way, but this is Aaron Jones's offense. So yeah, it's plug him in. You drafted him as your RB1. Don't overthink it. Put him in. I think this will be a fine matchup for him.
As a Packers fan, I would love to get your perspective, because this cracked me up on social media when this was going around after week 1 about the conspiracy theory of Rodgers. Oh, did he come back just to torpedo the Packers season after week 1? So you got to feel better after that week 2 game. However, it did take him, I would almost till halftime to really get the offense going still, even against Detroit. So what are you looking at with Rodgers and this offense in general? Do you think that they gave him the confidence to get snapped back to it, or you still have some concerns?
I don't really have any concerns when it comes to Aaron Rodgers. I think he's almost too prideful to torpedo the team. So when I saw that in week 1, I was like, yeah, okay, funny, but not true. He cares about his own legacy and his own records and stuff. So he's not going to be torpedoing a team just out of spite. Week 2, yeah, I'd liked him to have really just gone out there very early, like from the opening snap, and just made some statements. But I don't really have a worry with this. He's an elite level QB who, ironically, now he's not having to drag the team to victory. Like, we have some other pieces around him that means he doesn't need to do that. But this is a guy who can almost single-handedly win you a game. 2-3 seasons ago, I was looking at him in the same way as Michael Jordan was dragging Chicago Bulls to victory. It was that kind of same thing of like, I will not lose this game. You will win because I will not accept losing. So, I'm fine with Aaron Rodgers going forward. And I mean, based on what I've seen from Jordan Love, it's not like we've got an immediate heir to the throne. So,
no, I would agree with that as well. Let me hit this real quick.
Breaking news.
Not sure if there's much to this or not at this point, but DeAndre Hopkins, listed with a rib injury, is not at practice today as of right now for at least the open portion of it. So just kind of keep your eyes on that. Again, how severe that is, how relevant that is, we'll have to see, because what we've seen in the NFL thus far, and you can comment on this, I'm sure you've noticed this as well, a lot of veterans are getting off days on Fridays now. It used to be, it was always Wednesday. Now it's turned into, maybe it's a Wednesday, maybe it's a Friday. In AJ Brown's case, last year, he never practiced on Thursday. He would practice on Wednesday, practice on Friday, but never practice on Thursday. So we're seeing guys kind of rotate as far as when they get days off. I mean, what do you make of that, and what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to veterans training or not, I'm never really worried about them, because you know what they're going to be doing when they're out there, especially those elite players like DeAndre Hopkins, like AJ Brown. Like, you don't need to train if you're elite. Is my take. Like, he's going to go out there, he's going to go make plays. DeAndre Hopkins will be DeAndre Hopkins. So yeah, I never really get worried about that. Where I typically get worried is if they're not training for multiple days and there's no reports from beat writers or anything to say, oh no, it's just a rest or anything like that. That's when you get worried. That's when you start going, I'm not sure if this guy's going to suit up. But yeah, don't get worried if veterans aren't practicing at least one session in the week.
Right. And the only reason why I wanted to bring this up, because this is technically to be him popping up on the injury report during the week. So just something to kind of keep an eye on, but we don't know if that's anything to be worried about or not. All right, let's go to the San Francisco side of the ball, where we actually I did get a little bit of an update while we were on the show. Elijah Mitchell might not practice again, considered very questionable by beat writers for this Sunday. I had him as a must-play RB2 because the 49ers rushing attack has always carved up the Green Bay Packers, and right now the Packers defense looks like it can't stop anything anyway. What's going to be really interesting here, Mitchell misses, given all the other injuries, and given that Trey Sermon is actually progressing very well through concussion protocol. He's expected to go on Sunday. After all that Shanahan shenanigans, we are going to wind up with an opportunity where Trey Sermon is going to be the lead back this week. Here's what I'll say, and I don't have my rankings updated to reflect this just as of yet. I still need to wait for more reports, all updated on Saturday and Sunday. Check it out on Fantasy Pros or check it out on BaileyFantasySports.com. He'll be an RB2 for me if he is out there and there's no Elijah Mitchell and there's no JaMychal Hasty against the Green Bay Packers. So he'll be in that must-play category for me. What do you make of this backfield in this whole situation scenario?
I want the 49ers starting running back. Knowing who that is week to week is the skill.
Right.
I think that's the biggest thing I can say, right? So I think right now it does seem like they are somewhat consolidating it. It's not like it used to be, where there's maybe 4 guys taking equal amount of snaps. So yeah, I think Sermon, I'm hoping Sermon is the guy because I drafted him in quite a few different places. And I actually picked him up where a lot of people dropped him after Elijah Mitchell kind of
good move
came
by
about
you.
because I picked him up just because I was like, this guy's still the same person that I thought he was at the start of the season. And, I actually wondered if it was one of those situations where actually the guy that you want to own isn't the guy that's active on game day because the guy that's active, Raheem Mostert and Trey Sermon are too similar. So you don't want the same guy. That's kind of where I was with picking him up. So, either way, this Packers defense stopping the running back seems somewhat optional. So I would, I'd be fine starting Trey Sermon. And I think, who was the other guy who's been a really popular pickup this week? Some practice squad guy, Patrick.
Jacques Patrick. But he's a Trey Sermon type himself. And that's why I don't really understand why they signed him to begin with. He's not a difference to Trey. He's a power back. He's not a speedster guy. He's not an outside guy. He's not a special teams guy. He's more of that kind of a build. So that's why I was surprised they made that move. Because especially when you consider they already had Kerryon Johnson, who is expected to get called up from the practice squad and be on the active roster himself. They're the same guys. They're all the same guys. That's why I thought when they brought in Duke Johnson, Lamar Miller, and it was somebody else on top of my head. I can't remember who it was, but I thought they were going to sign a Duke Johnson, and that didn't wind up happening when they brought him in for a workout. But yeah, look, Shanahan's giving me an aneurysm. I had quite a few leagues where I drafted Mostert, and then like a round or two later, I drafted Sermon, thinking like, all right, one way or another, I'm going to have the starting running back of the San Francisco 49ers. And then that just completely blew up in my face after week 1. So it's driving me nuts. But I do believe in Sermon's talent, but not just his talent. I believe in his fit in this offense. His skill set fits what this offense wants to do. So I think once he's out there, he'll be good. And then they'll be okay. And then everything, the Shanahan shenanigans can calm down a little bit. At least I'm hoping anyway. But again, if you have Trey Sermon, you picked him up, whatever the case may be, keep holding on to him. This is a big reason why. Elijah Mitchell's not a big guy. He is a guy who might break down. That's why I was a little bit worried about them giving him the workload in the first place. But if he doesn't play this week, I would have confidence in playing Trey Sermon against the Green Bay Packers. So that's the mess going on in the backfield. All right. Now, I'll say this too. If Mitchell does play, he's also an RB2 for me. I would start him. He would still be the starter in my mind, especially after watching last week. Sermon didn't get involved until he got hurt. So that was what I would do if Mitchell does wind up playing here. The wide receivers is the other migraine. Everything's a migraine in San Francisco right now. We know Deebo's going to get the ball. He comes into my wide receiver 12 spot. Pretty much the first 2 weeks, this entire offense has been designed around getting Deebo the ball. Not George Kittle. I'll talk about Brandon Ayuk in a second, but it's been designed specifically to get Deebo Samuel the ball in space, and this year down the field a little bit more than any other point in his career as well. So where are you at on Deebo against the Green Bay Packers this week?
I think it's somewhat difficult to tell because you got Alexander for the Packers, who's probably going to be covering Samuel, I would have thought. But I mean, Samuel, when a player has a big game like that, I typically go back and I want to watch the game to actually see, was it busted coverage or is it just consistent? And it just seems to me like he is a playmaker. They're just looking to get him the ball in the hands and just see what happens. I mean, especially with someone who like Jimmy G at quarterback, and until that changes, he's not going to be the dynamic guy that you need to move the chains. So look to the guys, as you said earlier, be the point guard and give it to your dangerous players. Deebo Samuel looks really dangerous. I thought we were going to see some type of Ayuk Samuel mashup between the two throughout the season. It's not really happened. But yeah, Deebo Samuel is an automatic start if you have him. Like, don't overthink it.
Yeah, 100%. Now, we go to the Ayuk side. I have him as wide receiver 53 this week. The good parts are this. He had a practice in full last 2 weeks. Last week, his snap count went up. He was playing well ahead of Trent Sherfield. So that talk about was there going to be like a 50-50 rotation between the two, that goes out the window, thankfully, because I was going to have a conniption on that too. Brandon Ayuk, I like him in DFS this week because against the Green Bay Packers, they're going to have to put up points. I do think this is going to be a higher scoring game heading into this matchup. I don't think everything can go to Deebo and George Kittle. I think Ayuk's going to have to get involved. Now, in redraft leagues, I don't see how you have any confidence in playing him, so I have some interest in DFS, but it wouldn't shock me if Ayuk got going in this particular game, a couple of weeks removed from the hamstring injury, playing full in practice, having a snap count go up last week, should go up even more this week, and the first game for them this year, where they actually are going to be forced to have to score points because they're playing a team that's just as good, if not better, than they are. For rest of the season, I'm holding on to Brandon Ayuk. Where are you at on Ayuk for this week and rest of the year?
I think he's a GPP play in DFS. For the rest of the year, the analysis I had at the offseason is still the same. He's really talented, great route runner. This offense it kind of needs those playmaking receivers, which is why they drafted him. I think that hamstring injury is, just slightly derailed the start of the season. I mean, I picked him up as a trade target where when I didn't get him, because for me, I think once he gets going, and I think the way they're dealing with a hamstring injury is exactly how you need to, which is, a little bit activity, a little bit more, and then you're good to go, rather than just sticking him out there, seeing what happens. Oh yeah, okay, it's just completely blown up on us. Season's over. So the Green Bay, the Packers secondary is not good outside of Alexander. Like, he's the one kind of shining light that we have. So you can kind of get us in secondary other than him. He's talented, but yeah. So as I say, GBP pickup for me. But I'm not going to be putting him in my lineups until I've seen at least 1 week of at least a really solid snap share. And so, yeah, I'd maybe put him in for next week.
Yeah, I mean that's this game could be where you start to play Ayuk after this week. I'm with you on that. I got to hit this real quick.
Breaking news.
Carson Wentz is out on the practice field taking drops and making passes, which I am completely shocked by, with the guy who has 2 ankle sprains, one being a high one and one being a low one, but he is out there. So we know the Colts will be desperate to have him out there rather than a Brett Hundley or Jacob Easton. So if he's out there practicing today, there's a pretty good he'll suit up on Sunday. That doesn't mean he won't be a high injury risk on Sunday, and I wouldn't play him. But if you are in a spot where you were hoping you'd be able to play Michael Pittman, I think you can play him as a wide receiver 3 against Tennessee if Carson Wentz is going to be the starting quarterback. And this would boost up Jonathan Taylor a little bit for me because the offense will be a little bit better as well. So just kind of a tidbit there, but it looks like he's going to be good. And just got some more news. Dalvin Cook is not going to practice again today. Left the field after stretching, so we're going to have to see exactly what his official status will be. It'll probably be questionable. We'll have to that will probably want to be a game time decision. Unfortunately, that's a 4:00 game. Hopefully, we'll get some confirmation before that when we head into Sunday. So that's the news coming out. Some of these injury reports are getting out here. Let's get back into San Francisco. Look, without Zadarius Smith for the Green Bay Packers, there's pretty much no pass rush, so there's going to be success in the passing game. I think this is also a game where George Kittle gets right. I got him at tight end 4, and I'm not panicking on George Kittle. If Kittle has a mediocre week this week, he becomes a very high priority buy low candidate for me heading into the rest of the season. So where are you looking at for there?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, the tight end position, as we spoke about, there's not a lot of guys out there that you'd feel particularly confident going week in, week out. The start of the season Kittle's had I'd say it's more about Deebo Samuel being really, really good and really effective rather than George Kittle not being. So I would definitely be looking to trade him if I could, because I think you'll find a lot of owners that will just sell really cheap. I mean, you might even find some. I don't know how casual your league is, but in some real casual leagues, you might even have some guys just drop him just because they're frustrated that they drafted him so high and he's done nothing. Emotion gets over, drop. So, yeah, I would say that's exactly it. I mean, he's the type of player you can put in your tight end spot week in, week out and feel good about it. So, no reason to make that change.
I mean, this is a good fantasy football tip teaching moment. Yeah, know your league. If you guys know you have emotional players who, will overreact one way or another on any one given performance. I mean, this is why buy low and sell higher things to begin with, because you're counting on the emotion of the other players in your league. So know your league. If you know somebody who has George Kittle and they're a bit of a hothead, it's a good time to try to buy low on him because he's going to be great. He's going to finish as long as he's healthy. He's going to finish as the top 3 tight end by the end of the year. There's no doubt about that. Let's get into the Monday night game. Let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, the Dallas Cowboys. This should be a decent game. I want to ask you this real quick. Have you been watching the regular broadcast, or do you watch? Well, it's actually at night, so you're probably watching it the next day anyway. But have you seen any of the Peyton Eli broadcasts for these Monday night ESPN games?
I haven't, to be honest.
Awesome.
I typically watch a lot of I'll try and catch it. So the Monday night game, because my phone blows up with all of the results and everything like that anyway, and I want to get back into the swing of things. So with content and things, I typically watch them on Nate. So maybe this week I'll try and watch the full length thing. So that'll be good.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. First of all, you learn a lot about football, and between those two, I just find it funny. Peyton does like 99% of the talking. Eli has like a statement here and there, and they usually have a third person as a guest that they'll bring on a different guest throughout the entire broadcast. Watched it last week. It was really a lot of fun. This game though, Jalen Hurts must play. First of all, he always has that rushing ability, but you saw even last week in a game in which they put up 11 points. Jalen Hurts still had a great fantasy game for you guys. I love the matchup here against Dallas. He comes in at QB5 for me, and I think he's going to be a must-start top 10 quarterback rest of season. Where are you at on that?
Yeah, he's there just because of that rushing ability. So if you're a rushing quarterback, it's very difficult to finish lower than a high-end QB2. It's really difficult to finish anything lower than that because of how many points you'll get from rushing. I mean, we've seen seasons and seasons of this. So yeah, Jalen Hurts, you likely drafted him as a top QB in your league. So until you have a reason to not play him, I think you have to. And against Dallas, this isn't a defense that really makes me worried for his fancy output. So I think you go with it.
Yeah, 100%. Miles Sanders comes in at RB18 for me on the week. I do like his matchup without DeMarcus Lawrence. The Cowboys are going to be susceptible more so to the run than I think they would have been previous to. I talked about this on Tuesday, though. I want to reiterate. If Kenneth Gainwell is available in your leagues, pick him up, because to me, it's just a matter of time before Sanders breaks down. He's not a guy I think can hold up on a 17-game season with the workload he's been getting. And Kenneth Gainwell looks every bit as good, if not maybe even more explosive than a Miles Sanders. So when he gets an opportunity, I don't think he's going to go away necessarily. So Kenneth Gainwell, if he's still available in your leagues, please pick him up. Not going to play him this week, but Miles Sanders do like him quite a bit. And Devonta Smith, I have him at wide receiver 25. I wouldn't be surprised if he finished inside the top 24 this week. The only reason I don't have him ranked inside the top 24 is because Diggs on the Dallas Cowboys, he's a legitimate quarter, and he's probably going to be matched up on Devonta Smith more times than not. But that's been the number one guy. Even though he had a bad week last week, productivity-wise, still at 7 targets. He had 8 targets the week before, and that's Jalen Hurts' guy right now. That's his favorite target. So I really like Devonta Smith as a high-end wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 2. Where are you?
Yeah, it's the same thing. We've spoken about this a few times before as well. So with even low level, but just because the sheer amount of targets it'll get, he's going to be fantasy viable. So yeah, I think fire him up. I think for me, the biggest part of this receiving offense though is going to be Dallas Goedert for me. That's the guy I really want to be playing in this game. So I guess we'll just move on to tight end as a result. But yeah, Dallas Goedert is the guy that I think is going to be the most viable. Dallas Cowboys haven't been that good against tight ends, and with the target share that he should get, because the Eagles don't actually have that many receivers. I know they got Jalen Reagor, but he should be seeing a healthy target share. So he's very much I think he's he's in my top 12. I think for this week. I want to say he's number 7 this week, but I can't remember. I'd need to check.
Well, if he's number 7, you're a little bit higher than I am, but I do have him inside my top 12 as well. I have him at tight end 10. And the only thing really holding him back is unfortunately the split that's still going on between him and Zach Ertz as far as playing time goes. Now, I think last week Ertz actually wound up running 2 more routes than he did. I know he was on the COVID-19 list earlier in the week, but they're saying that they're pretty confident he's going to be able to suit up for this game. As it stands right now, things may change. We have to keep our eyes on that. But as of right now, I'm ranking Goddard as if Ertz is going to be able to play in this game, which is why it comes at a tight end 10 for me. The big thing about last week was that they both had to stay in and block quite a bit, and that's what kind of killed both of their values on top of usurping one another for targets. This week, they shouldn't have that same issue. Again, without Lawrence, they don't have the same pass rush in Dallas. I don't anticipate Goddard and Ertz having to block quite as much. I expect them to be as involved in this passing game as any of the wide receivers outside of Devonta Smith. So I'm with you. This is a week I'm not having any fear in plugging and playing a Dallas Goedert either. And that's pretty much what I'm sticking to when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, on the Cowboys side of the ball, Amari Cooper is still listed as questionable heading into this game. We'll see what his practice level is like, dealing with a rib issue. He is a legitimate questionable for heading into Monday night. So we're going to have to watch this. But if he's out there, he's my wide receiver 16. Just the target consolidation that goes on without Michael Gallup that now goes to Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. I don't care if whoever's going to get matched up on Darius Slade in this game. It doesn't bother me because they're both going to be top 24 wide receivers. I actually have them both in the top 20 this week. Where are you at on the Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb heading into this matchup?
Yeah, I have no reason to think that they're not going to be right at top of the positional scoring. This Eagles defense doesn't really fire me all that much at all. Both of those guys are elite, great route runners. Dak's looking pretty decent as well. So I think that Dallas offense is going to fire. And as I said, this Eagles defense doesn't really worry me at all. So I think I've got both of them roughly where you said you had them as well. So Michael Gallup is a bit of a frustrating one because I kind of had some sneaky hopes for him, and I thought with Cooper maybe struggling a little bit with the injury that he was going to see more work. But you just have to take it as you can.
Yeah, I'm with you on that as well. I'm not worried about that. And also, what are you making out of the Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard situation? I'm still telling people who have Zeke, please don't panic. I have his RB9 going into this week, although the Eagles are pretty tough against the run, but he's still playing double the snaps of a Tony Pollard. Now, what's making Tony Pollard interesting is the insane efficiency rate in which he's being utilized when he's on the field. Is there anything you're worried about if Zeke were to stay healthy, him just losing more and more work to Pollard? Or are you just like, look, as long as he's out there, he's a lead guy, you have nothing to worry about, even if Pollard's involved?
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'd be. And I mean, I think we could even see a situation where, it's similar to how the Saints used to work with Ingram and Kamara. Like Pollard could be the Kamara with the insane efficiency, and Zeke could be the Ingram, where he's just volume and kind of just touches. So I mean, don't be worried if you've got Ezekiel Elliott that he's going to be losing loads of work. Frankly, the Cowboys have invested too much money into him for him to not be on the field. So yeah, just stick him in your lineup. Don't overthink it.
Yeah, I have him at RB9. I do have Pollard inside my top 36 just because, again, they use him when he's on the field and he's so explosive. But he's not going to have a high floor in any given week. He's just the top handcuff to me in my mind, who maybe he works his way into consistent flex conversation. Dak comes in at QB 12. I know he had a bad week last week. I'm not expecting the same thing to happen this week against the Philadelphia Eagles. You drafted Dak to be your starting quarterback. You continue to play Dak as your starting quarterback. Do you have any concerns there?
No, none at all. Exactly what you said. You drafted Dak in, towards the top end of your draft. Put him in. Until you have a reason to not put him in, you need to put him in.
Yeah. All right. So guys, let's go ahead. Let's get into the mailbag segment. Let's talk about that. We got 4 questions lined up. Now, as always, if you ever want to get on the mailbag segment, all you got to do, hit us up on social media at BellyUpMDFF Show. We'll answer every question that you put out there. I select a few of my favorites, put them on the show, and we give you guys a shout out there. So first up, we got Jeff. He asked Edwards-Helaire or Damian Harris rest of season in PPR.
Oh, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because
It is.
my gut says I want to say Edwards-Helaire because he's part of the Kansas City offense, but I think that's because my head is saying he's the starting running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, so he should be the answer. Damian Harris for me has definitely had a massive improvement going forwards. I think, with the fact that Cam Newton's not there stealing the red zone work, Damian Harris is very, very viable. I think rest of season. I think I'd probably go Harris just because he's kind of locked into a bit of a workload there, and he's getting those red zone looks, and the up and down. Someone else have that headache and the emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, I had to go with Harris. I had to go with Harris as well. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered. This is a big week for Edwards-Helaire. If he can't get it done in a decent way, at the very least, against the Chargers, I don't know when you're expecting to have a very good game, or at least not a game where you drafted him to be. So, yeah, I think I'd rather have Damian Harris because I know exactly what his role is. I'm going to know exactly when to play him based on the matchup as well. Odell, not Odell Beckham, I don't think, but Odell asked a question. Trade Harris and Mike Davis for Aaron Jones. I'm assuming he means Damian Harris. So Damian Harris and Mike Davis for Aaron Jones. If you can get that deal done, yeah. I don't know who's trading Aaron Jones after last week, pull the trigger, Odell.
Yeah, 100%. Don't even think it. Bite that hand off.
Yeah,
and the arm, bite it all off, right up to the shoulder. Bite it off.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a classic example of there's crazy things that happen in home leagues. So know your leagues, because sometimes you get deals done like this that make no sense. Sean, should I trade Javonte Williams for Tony Pollard? I have Zeke. I think that's a little bit of an interesting question. I would lean towards no, because I still think Javonte Williams, he's more of a viable play from a week-to-week basis, I still think, than Tony Pollard because of his playing time. And B, he doesn't, unlike Pollard, who needs a Zeke injury to become an RB1, I don't think Javonte Williams needs Melvin Gordon to get injured. I think he could possibly overtake him by the end of the season. So I would lean towards no, but it's closer than it would have been probably a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting question because it brings up the whole thing of the efficiency of Pollard. Can you rely on that? I think ultimately for me, I think I'd lean towards no as well. I'd want Williams because, as you said, Pollard needs to go. Zeke needs to go down for Pollard to be relevant, and I'd much rather have two guys that I can stick in my lineup week to week, which you're not going to have. You're not going to be putting Zeke and Pollard in your starting lineup pretty much any week. So I'd much rather have Javonte Williams and be able to mix and match matchups if I needed to. If Zeke really did fall off a cliff, then you can do that.
Agreed. And last question of the day, Gerald, he asks, should I drop Tannehill for Justin Field in a QB1 league when I have Aaron Rodgers? Gerald, I'm not going to answer your question. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a fantasy football advice in general. You have Aaron Rodgers. Stop in a one QB league. Stop messing around with the second quarterback. Stop wasting a roster spot to begin with. Why are you asking me questions about should I drop Tannehill for Justin Fields when you already have Aaron Rodgers? When are you going to bench Rodgers for either one of those guys? Either trade him away or open up that roster spot for something that might actually help you down the road. It makes no sense to me. I don't know where you're at, Rich.
Yeah, I mean, for me, my question would be, I wouldn't have picked up Tannehill. Right. If I had a Rodgers, because for me, if I've got Rodgers, I might take a late shot on a QB, but it's going to be the type of Justin Fields or something where, or Trey Lance, who's getting a lot of off-season buzz. Because what I really want is I want a guy who he could just go nuclear, and then it becomes a headache for me, Rodgers, or this guy who just goes bananas. You're never going to be in a week where you're saying, "Oh, I'm going to start Ryan Tannehill over Aaron Rodgers," because you know who Tannehill is. Justin Fields with rushing ability and all of that, you didn't know what he was going to be going into the season. So that's more the confusing thing for me. I would agree with you. You've got Aaron Rodgers. Probably just leave it, have the bench spot, do something else interesting with it, take a shot at RB. Because I mean, you could have drafted. Not Tyson Williams, because no one really expected him to be the guy. But you could have drafted like a late round running back. You could have had Eli Mitchell. And then you could have saved all of that fab. To answer his question, Yeah, I would, because you don't know what you've got in Justin Fields, and with the rushing ability that he has, he could get this Chicago Bears offense moving forward. But I'd probably be looking to do something else with that spot instead.
Yeah, I like the answer there. Guys, it's going to do it for the show. I hope you all enjoyed it. We'll be back tomorrow night from 9:30 to 10:30 for the DFS, the MD's DFS contest show, and our lock bets heading into week 3. We're going to win you guys some money tomorrow night. Mr. Chaz Fleury from Sports Betting Weekly is going to come on. Rich, I want to thank you so much for coming on to the show. I had a wonderful time doing it with you. I hope we can have you on again at some point in the future. Just let the crowd know, where they can follow you at and what are some of the things you're working on now.
Yeah, so you can follow my work at kingfancysports.com. Got a great team of writers over there producing content week in, week out. Social media, where we have it, we're at kfancy_sports. So yeah, connect. We're always happy to help start sit questions, anything like that. We've got a Discord server as well. So yeah, there's a bunch of different things that we're working on. So drop in, have a chat, have some fun.
Absolutely. Guys, make sure you're following us on social media at BillyUpMDFF Show. Subscribe to the MD's Fantasy Football Show channel and download us on your favorite pod streaming app. Catch us tonight from 6 to 7:30 on the Unhinged Radio Network, unhingedsn.airtime.pro. We'll see you guys throughout the weekend. Make sure to check out BillyUpFantasySports.com for our rankings. We'll be updating that as we get these injury reports out. Everybody, take care. We'll see you tomorrow night.